Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, very warm welcome to Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, the Minister of Commerce and Industry of India. Thank you very much, ma'am, for being here with us. I have with me on stage Manoj, Ladwa, and before we begin proceedings for this evening, let me just do a quick introduction. As we all know, both India and the United Kingdom have governments that have very strong mandate from their people, and the point really about that mandate is to do justice to that. And two dynamic prime ministers who just met here in London a few days ago. And at this forum now with us is Nirmala Sitharaman. And let me tell the audience a little small factoid about her. She's not just the minister, she was also one of the most eloquent spokespersons of the Bharatiya Janata Party. But she's someone who's actually worked in the field of agriculture economics, followed by time at Price Waterhouse and also the BBC World Service. She's joining us, as we can all see, live from New Delhi. She's just reached Delhi after a long trip and come straight. So thank you very much, ma'am, once again for being here with us. What we are going to do here, is to request you, and I'm going to sort of ask you about that one big thing, the centerpiece of a recent policy action that was taken in Delhi, which everyone is speaking about, and this is the FDI reforms. And then we will try and get in some questions from the audience for you. We'll also subsequently, just in a short while from now, be joined by Ms. Priti Patel, Nirmala ji's counterpart here, and we'll try and take this conversation forward at that stage. So, Nirmala ji, let me ask you to tell our audience here and all those people who are watching us across the world about the strategy behind the recent FDI reforms, 15 broad sectors, massive amount of opening up, and like someone said, it was just the equivalent of a mini Indian budget, ma'am.
This was quite some time in the making. As you are aware, about 6 months ago, we did announce opening up or changing the caps for some sectors. We were, for the first time, opening up defense and took some cautious steps at that time. But subsequently, we've had a lot of input coming in saying, if you've gone that far, there are other regulations and rules which have to be made easier. So from the point of view of ease of doing business, even within these sectors, which were opened up 6 months ago, and in some others which had no serious legislative impact, we could still open up and make a difference. So this announcement before Deepavali was of those sectors and also of those rules and regulations which had to be simplified, because otherwise the intention of this government in terms of moving forward with greater reforms wouldn't have really been attractive. And that is why the announcement of these 15 sectors has surprised a lot of people, but is definitely going to create a big impact in a market which is looking for simplification for those investors who are coming into it.
All right, Nirmala ji, and as you were speaking, we have the pleasure of introducing the Right Honourable Priti Patel, Member of Parliament and Minister of State for Employment. Manoj is also here with us. I would request the audience to welcome both ministers on stage, and without wasting any more time, I'm going to go back to Nirmala ji. The point really at this time is to sort of get the context of the recent reforms, 15 odd reforms, and for the sake of the audience, I'm going to talk about key sectors, the construction sector, single brand retail, banking, defense, broadcast, airlines, a lot of irrational rules being done away with, investments by NRIs And I'm sure that's going to perhaps motivate some people here in London to look at investment by NRIs in real estate. The idea being to unleash the market potential that India has for overseas investment. Ms. Sitharaman, what is the appetite that you encounter in your travels across the globe with respect to a large country and a large economy like India? Because a lot of investors in the past have questioned the ability of India to absorb those capital inflows. Has that changed? How are you dealing with that?
There is definitely a lot of appetite, and the perception has definitely changed. With the new government, in fact, the perception is further strengthened by the steps taken by the new government. But at the same time, in between, even as we were doing things, there was this feeling within India that this may not be enough, we need to move faster, and also on a lot more other sectors. But when you go abroad, the feeling that you get from major corporate leaders and also from MNCs, business leaders, is that India has to do a lot more, because ease of doing business is something which is in the minds of people, more from the point of view of simplified tax structure, which is what they want. And I'm glad the Finance Minister, Sri Jaitley, has been repeatedly saying that he's working on making the tax structure in India very simple and easy to follow, and also committing on the point that we don't believe in retrospective taxation. So these are the kind of issues on which most of the investors abroad have been periodically voicing their concerns, and I'm glad to say that this government is definitely addressing all of them. As a result, there is definitely a change in perception.
Okay, there is a complete change of perception, and Nirmala, I'm going to request you to wait in with us, because I'm going to request Manoj to ask the first question of Priti Patel in terms of the larger, broader relationship, the trade relationship. And of course, we were discussing the visa issue, but I know, Manoj, that's not the first question that you're going to put to her. And thank you very much. Let me once again thank you, because we pulled you out of a vote that's happening, and thank you very much for that. Manoj.
Okay. Thank you very much, Minister Sitharaman, and also Minister Patel as well. My question is around your area of responsibility, which is jobs. India has gone on a path of job creation, and it needs to create 1 million jobs every month. It's very focused on that. And here in the UK, Minister, you're responsible for job creation. The recent visit, how is that going to help you to boost jobs in this country?
Sure. Well, let me start by saying it's a great privilege to be here this afternoon. So thank you for inviting me and hosting this really significant forum, so soon after Prime Minister Modi's visit to London. And I think it's fair to say it was a phenomenal visit. Manoj, just on your point about me creating jobs, governments don't create jobs. Prime Minister Modi is very clear about the economic reforms and the market liberalisations he's bringing to India. It's the free market that creates jobs and business investment. And that will be absolutely crucial in terms of the skills agenda, Skill India, the young people of India and the very clear future that they will have by many of the announcements and investments that were announced over the visit of Prime Minister Modi. Now, a couple of key highlights, I think, just to put on the table right now. Skills and people. As diaspora champion, I'm constantly going on about the people-to-people ties. But skills and training for young Indians in particular, there is a limitless opportunity now, I think, following this visit, through many of the trade partnerships. The CEO Forum as well are raising this and discussing this. I've met with some partners involved in that today as well. So in terms of FDI going into India, that will provide great opportunities for the skills agenda and for new opportunities for young people. Importantly, in my area, though, I'm very keen to share learnings with our great programmes like apprenticeships, sector-specific initiatives as well around skills, and making that applicable to young people in India, but also working with educational institutions on vocational skills and training as well.
Okay, Ms. Patel, that was a good point, and I'll have a follow-up to that question. But before that, we have two questions that have come in from the audience, and I'm going to take the privilege of first going to Lord Karan Bilamoria, who is here with us in the audience, for his question. Karan, do tell us who do you want the question to be answered by, and if you can get a mic for him right away. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Minister, hello to you from the UK, and Priti, very good to see you here. Manoj, congratulations to you and your team for organizing the most amazing visit last week. I remember a year and a half ago when Prime Minister Modi won the unprecedented for 3 decades majority in India. We're waiting for him to visit the UK. And we saw the event in Madison Square Gardens and thought, wow, that is amazing. What a welcome America has given him. And what we did last week, well, it was double the size of Madison Square Gardens and Wembley. And what a visit. He addressed both houses of Parliament, which is the first time a serving Indian Prime Minister has ever done that in history. So the question I want to ask you, Minister, in India, and also to you, Priti, is the perspectives of this visit. This event is a really good idea by India Inc. to have it straight away in Bloomberg the week after the Prime Minister Modi's visit to follow up on the actions. And the messages that came across last week from Prime Minister Modi, who I believe is the best orator in the world when he speaks in Hindi, were very clear. He communicated his vision for India extremely clearly to India and to the Indian community here, which is the most successful ethnic minority community here in the UK. He also reached out to the wider British community, and the messages were beyond business. How much has his message got back to India in terms of dealing with the UK? What is the perception you have, Minister, of the UK? Because the criticisms over here has been, oh, India is not important, the UK is not important to India. This is the 29th visit Prime Minister Modi has made in 1.5 years. Does the UK really matter? To us, what we saw is the UK, from everything he said, from his gestures, his genuine emotion, the analogy he used about turning his watch upside down and saying you can tell the time in the UK and you turn your watch upside down, it'll tell you the time in India. That happens with no other country. We're so joined together. He emotionally spoke to us and in fact said the UK really matters. The British Council, Manoj and I were at the British Council when the British Council released a report, India Matters. And that was the view of young British people and young Indians on each other's countries. And we were told from that report that the UK is one of the top 2 countries in the world to young Indians.
Right.
Is that what you see? And also from an inward investment point of view, right. Ernst & Young's report, Ready, Start, Grow, says that India is actually one of the most attractive inward investment destinations around the world when they survey businesses. So I'd be very interested in your views on how much India matters to you, Minister, and Priti, what you thought of the whole visit from this point of view.
Thank you very much, Karan. Over to you, Nirmala ji.
Well, UK matters most, and I'll only be repeating the Prime Minister's words when he answered a question about how important it is for UK and how does the Prime Minister view UK being in the EU, and in that situation answering a question posed to him about UK and the EU. He said what he felt and what all of us feel about UK. UK is very important to us, both from the point of view of inward investment and also from the point of view of investments made by Indians in UK, which generates a lot of economic activity. I think UK has proven to be a very strong partner, and that impression continues at all levels. The only different plank which I would want to bring in here, which I would definitely want to improve from where it is today, is the attitude of Indian students when they choose universities to go and study abroad. In India, it's a big thing for youngsters to aspire to go to a university abroad and to have a higher qualification obtained. UK used to be very high on that list. But today, in fact, this is something which I said when I was in the UK last December 14. The priority of Indian students now seem to be moving towards the US or Australia. And in that, I would certainly want Indian students to consider going to the UK universities, because there's so much in common between India and UK on that. Otherwise, I think in terms of skills, like Honorable Priti Patel has said, in terms of acquiring skills, in terms of sharing of expertise on this, in terms of investments, in terms of small and medium enterprises, I think UK has a lot to offer for us, and we should certainly engage with the UK for it.
So I completely agree with the Honourable Minister's comments. I think it's worth pointing, though, certainly from the UK government's point of view, David Cameron, Prime Minister David Cameron, has invested a great deal in the UK-India relationship. It's very personal to him in terms of the focus on having that relationship with India.
And he spoke about Akshay Din.
Of course, exactly. But there's a fundamental reason for this, though, which is the point I made earlier. It's people to people. If our people are successful and prosperous, our economies will be equally as successful and prosperous. There is a mutual shared interest in here, definitely for both countries to stand shoulder to shoulder together on whatever economic journey they are embarking upon. And what an exciting time, I think, for Britain, the United Kingdom government, to be a partner with the Indian government at a time of great economic reforms, liberalisations, so many young people, yes, coming to the UK to study as well. But let's be clear, education is a competitive commodity as well around the world, and we want India's students to come to the UK. There are no barriers in doing that, but obviously it is a competitive marketplace. So we have to make sure that we are always there at the forefront, and being the country of choice with India is exactly why, we've had the visit, and one of the key outcomes of this visit too.
Country of choice. Manoj, you wanted to intervene with a point.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring the point of Europe back in, and I'd like to hear Priti's view on this, that London has been, and the UK has been, the destination of choice for Indian businesses, and the UK has had traditionally the lion's share of investment into Europe. But given the current debate and the uncertainty around UK's position in Europe, what sort of message do you want to give back to Indian companies that are looking at investing in this in Europe?
Well, I think, first of all, there is no uncertainty, because the greatest certainty is that we're going to have a referendum in 2017, so that gives everyone the clarity in terms of the direction of travel. The second point that I would make, though, is look at the investment opportunities with regards to the City of London that were announced last year. The City of London being the gateway to financial access to finance, financial capital, infrastructure investment for India. That will remain, come what may. London is the most competitive financial hub in the world. And notwithstanding the fact that obviously we attract Indian businesses to the United Kingdom, and we get a great lion's share of the Indian side coming to the United Kingdom, because the UK invests back into India as well. We are dynamic, we have a very open and flexible economy, and of course economic flexibility is crucial, basically, as the world expands, as economies liberalise. And no matter what happens with Europe, I have to say I think we'll be highly competitive, and we will be seen to the place, we will definitely be seen as the place in Europe to come to for investment, trade, and doing many of the type of deals that we only just, we've only just skimmed on in this very short discussion today.
Okay. I know that you have to leave very shortly for a vote, so I'm going to thank you for your time here today. A round of applause for Priti Patel. And as she leaves, I'm going to come back to Nirmala Sitharaman ji, because we have another question. And since the Minister Patel spoke about the financial sector and the value of or the importance that London has as the financial capital. And we know, Manoj, that there has been a dispersal as trade has globalized, so has power shifted all across the world. But London remains so. And I'm going to go to the second question, a senior representative from the Indian financial sector, Mr. Rakesh Sethi, who is the Executive Director of the Union Bank of India. And I'm going to request you to ask your question to Nirmala Sitharaman. Mr. Sethi.
Good evening, Minister.
Good evening.
First thing, I would like to compliment the Bloomberg for doing this show, because post Prime Minister visit, generally the visit is over, the follow-up doesn't happen. So it's a good beginning, and I believe the Prime Minister has plenty of further programs to be visiting Singapore and other places. this program should continue. But Madam, coming to the question about ease of doing business, we have done, I would say, reasonably well from 134 to 130. But 130 is out of 189. And maybe I think that date was June 15. 5 months we have done a lot of things which perhaps will make the things more on the positive side. But from your side, what are the core focus areas where the UK investors can be of more assurance that no, on ease of doing business, these are the further steps which we are going to take? Please.
Well, the steps which were taken from December of last year, much before the new ease of doing business rankings were announced, were taken on board by the states also, who in fact were also ranked separately. They were not the last and final on this. We have really afterwards too, and even today, are keeping the heat on the matter. We are really making sure that every little input that we get, any small obstruction that may exist, are all being addressed and removed. So the ease of doing business related work of the government has not ceased. We are continuing with it, and we shall keep going, because from unexpected quarters you get information saying this is a bit worrying. Like I was in Goa today, and Goa, as you know, has a small, fairly, I shouldn't say small, fairly large pharmaceutical export band of exporters in Goa. You also have quite a few other small exporters, all of them are small and medium, but wonderfully vibrant export sector. They were asking us legitimate questions about why should it take 5 days for the customs to give a go-ahead for any parcel of matter which is getting exported. Let us say FedEx or somebody carries it, and that remains for 5 days, whilst FedEx doesn't take more than 2 days to deliver it in the US, and the US doesn't, for instance, take more than 1 day to clear it after it reaches its shore. So these are kind of small time, but significantly worrying issues. So we are completely at ease in addressing these, and therefore it is not as if one time we spoke about it, some action was taken and we forgot. It's an ongoing process. This government is committed to it. Even small inputs which come in the process of digitizing and making everything online and transparent with minimum human interface, we shall keep doing.
Thank you very much, Nirmala ji, for your answer. In fact, if I may add, this is an example of what exactly we have been speaking about for quite some time today evening. The Union Bank of India, and I was very pleasantly surprised to learn, just in a few months of setting up base here, has a book worth $150 million now. That's pretty fast by most standards, and it is on its way to further success. And that's an example of how there can be cooperation and correlation. Manoj, I know you wanted to come in on a point. Yeah. I'm also going to quickly request the audience, if you have questions for Ms. Sitharaman, there will be someone standing. Please write down that question and identify yourself, and I'll try and come to you as soon as I get that question from you. Manoj, over to you.
I can say Lord Karan Billimore also wants to come in, but before he comes in, I just want to ask Minister Sitharaman about one particular aspect that has come up recently, and that is that the UK visit has been a big visit by Prime Minister Modi. A lot of big announcements have been made by a lot of big companies. But the UK and India, the real lifeblood of both economies are the small and medium-sized enterprises. Where do you see the opportunities for collaboration between UK SMEs and Indian SMEs?
First of all, I think the UK SMEs are functioning in a far more open environment, and they have been there in that kind of an environment for some time. Whereas in India, the SMEs have flourished all right, but there is scope for them to expand and scale up too. Largely, till before a decade ago, they were under a very regulated environment. the regulated environment has given them several issues to handle. One, in terms of due diligence, and two, constantly being regulated, they did not have scope to look at, being themselves and also expanding. So in that context, I would think a lot of information sharing between SMEs in UK, which have seen a free market environment, minimum regulation, and also looking at competition from other countries, let's say in the EU. Whereas in India, they've largely been to themselves and addressing domestic markets. So if there is a possibility for SMEs to expand and also start exporting, there are lots of them already exporting. I'm not saying SMEs are confined strictly to domestic market, but for the potential that they have, it might help to have this interaction with the UK SMEs.
Okay, Karan, you wanted to come in.
Minister, thank you for your positive response to my earlier question. You brought up Indian students coming to the UK, and I speak proudly as the first Indian to be Chancellor for Russell Group University in Great Britain of the University of Birmingham, and also this year I've just been appointed as President of the UK Council for International Student Affairs for all the international students in the UK, almost 500,000. You're absolutely right. Our Prime Minister David Cameron says we're in a global race. And when it comes to universities, we are competing against the United States, Canada, and Australia specifically. The British Council report that Manoj and I took part in, the survey very clearly showed that India is ranked, the Indians rank the UK as one of the top 2 countries when they look abroad. And what they respect about the UK, most young Indians, is our higher education, our universities. And yet we have unfortunately had an immigration policy in this country that has changed over the last 5 years. 8 years ago in Parliament, I fought for a 2-year post-graduation work visa for foreign students. That was really attractive to Indian students in particular. Unfortunately, it's now much more difficult to work after you graduate over here. Secondly, over here, we include international students as immigrants. And the government has a target to reduce net immigration. And we're trying very hard to get the government and the Prime Minister to take international students out of our immigration figures, because we really value Indian students. We want Indian students to come here. They are the brightest and the best in the world.
Thank you, Karan. Nirmala ji, that was a question for you.
Was it a question? I thought he broadly agreed with me, and I was quite happy to.
Okay, so may I request you to add upon what he said, especially from the student point of view, because, not everyone appreciates the intricacies of the issue involved. And just a couple of hours back, we had the Indian High Commissioner, ma'am, here speaking about that in detail, and Manoj also provided a perspective. We know that this issue was discussed during the recent visit. Yes. But generally speaking, would you be concerned if the United Kingdom were to sort of tighten down on the rules with regard to allowing Indian students to come in and study? The point that Karan also addressed.
Yes, absolutely. I would definitely be concerned if the rules are tightened, and if Indian students who are coming there for higher education are treated along with immigrants and restricted therefore. And I would certainly be concerned also if the work visas are not allowed for students of higher qualifications, because once they acquire that kind of a qualification, they are only looking for specific natured jobs. They are not going to be working in jobs which don't require the qualification which they have acquired. And if there are employees, and I don't think they're going to be by the dozen, there would be few of them. If they are few and they're going to have to look for such qualified students, why not? And give the visa for just 1 year or 2 years, and that's happening in Australia. If that is happening in Australia, Australia tends to benefit for it, because the moment you give such visas, the employer is going to benefit from a well-qualified employee, and after a year or two, the student is going to go out because his visa term ends, and he'll look for better opportunities or opportunities elsewhere. So I think that immediate benefit that an employer-employee relationship can give for an economy will be absolutely lost, and it will be very short-sighted of the UK to take a policy which is going to restrict the work visas. And there is one other aspect which of course is a matter of concern. The fees are very expensive. The students coming from abroad are charged absolutely to pay through their nose. This probably a disincentive for Indian students to go there. So these are certainly issues which will have to be addressed. I'm glad during the Prime Minister's visit these issues were discussed, and I hope the response from the UK authorities will be positive.
Okay. We have 3 questions, ma'am, and I'm going to bring them to you very quickly, crisply, because we know you also had a very long day. The first question is about the goods and services tax, and the question says that it is perhaps not likely to be implemented anytime soon, and if so, in absence of this, how can you help interstate business? And the suggestion comes by waiving the C form requirement. The point being that within the EEC, inter-country business is done without any C form. So essentially 2 parts to the question. If GST is not going to happen soon, can you take steps to ease doing business in the run-up to the introduction of the combined tax?
I hope that sooner the GST gets passed. And for that, I know for sure the finance minister is keen to engage with the opposition parties, particularly the Congress, to understand where their difficulties are, because ultimately it is in national interest that we need to pass this bill sooner rather than later. So with that, I hope the GST will get passed. It has gone through every parliamentary process, the committees reviewing, suggestions coming in, amendments taken on board, yet another review, and so on. So the Empowered Committee itself has done a lot of work. With all these parliamentary committees also having contributed to it, there is no reason to delay it any further in the national interest. On the very, speculative question of what if it doesn't get passed, and would you want to do something from the ease of doing business point of view? The ease of doing business point of view, I'll certainly keep doing, but with the hope that it gets passed faster.
Okay, with the hope that it will get passed fast. The second question, and this question is from Amit Mehta of Dun Thornton. Pleased to hear that you are implementing the insolvency rule changes. We requested a few last year when you addressed the Indian business community at India House in London. When do you see the rules being passed into legislation?
Again, as I said, at the earliest, because on the bankruptcy code, there's enough work happening and there's a lot of positive inputs. And I don't see a political difference holding it back. So that should be one of the earlier bills to be passed.
Okay, the last question that I have on my list, and then we'll probably take a wrap-up comment and let it be. This question from Vipul Thakur, ma'am, and this is pretty much at the heart of all the change that the government is driving through. The question says that under the leadership of the Prime Minister Modi, India is making progress. However, often the impression is created that the Indian civil service is not moving fast enough to implement the policies of the government. And if I may add, we could probably have spoken about other civil services, considering we are in London, but the question is about the Indian civil service, ma'am.
I wouldn't agree with that. The civil service is here to work with the elected government. They may have questions, and the Prime Minister, of course, is so dynamic and so quick in doing things. If we expect the system to catch up with the speed, yes, they would want to catch up, but it would probably require a bit of time. But that's not because they want to be, holding back, that they are not along with us in doing things. They are definitely working together with the government of the day. Prime Minister is, of course, somebody who wants to move fast and faster. The civil service will work with the government, and I'm sure that's not going to be a reason to worry.
Madam Minister, we've been covering here from London and bringing a whole lot of several hours of content and conversations with investors, big companies. And one of the points that was raised, and I would really want you to provide as detailed an answer as you could, is about the recent result of the state election in Bihar and a certain section believing that that will impede the ability of your government to push through reforms, and that in some ways that represents a huge loss of political capital which will come in the way of your reform agenda. Is that an assessment you would agree with, and perhaps what would you want to really say to all those people who have these fears?
I don't agree with that assessment at all. The reforms for which we are committed, about which we have been speaking, about which we campaigned and got the mandate for in Lok Sabha 2014 elections, are those on which we are on track. We've been talking about it, we've been working on them, several of them have gone through and some of them are waiting to get through. And even this latest announcement of FDI is very clearly to show that we are committed to the kind of reforms for which we have sought the mandate and got the mandate. State elections do happen in India. And in fact, in a calendar year, sometimes most of us even think that, oh my God, there's another state election happening because the party's energies go in campaigning and so on. State elections do happen. But that is not to alter the course of the central government, which has won its mandate and has given a word that it shall fulfill that mandate in 5 years' time. In the 5 years, what we promised in our manifesto, we are here to fulfill. State elections and their outcomes can come out at any time, and they keep coming out each time. But that is not to say that the reforms will get halted. Not at all. We shall keep going, and we shall be committed to fulfill the mandate for which we've got the votes.
Okay.
So in 5 years, we shall move forward in the direction in which we promised.
Okay, committed to take forward the mandate and continue with reforms. Nirmala Sitharaman, thank you so much for joining us live from New Delhi at this conference. I know you had to adjust your schedules quite a bit, but I can tell you the audience is appreciating what you were saying right now. Thank you so much, Ma'am Minister, for sparing time with us. And with that, we'll